Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean and Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I'm a certified health coach, trainer, and author. And this podcast is for middle-aged men and women looking to optimize their health and get their bodies back to what it once was 10 to 15 years ago. I will give you simple, actionable items to get long-term sustainable results. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right. Welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I hope you had a great weekend. Happy Tuesday if you're listening to this on Tuesday. And hopefully you listened to my interview with Dr. Jason Fung. Been wanting to get him on the podcast for a while and really learned about Dr. Jason Fung when he came out with Obesity Code in 2016. And that sort of led me down my journey of fasting and helping clients with it. Also, my interview with Rita Spivak, if you want to listen to a testimonial regarding fasting, and she was a client of mine back in the day and got me interested as well. So either way, Dr. Jason Fung was a great interview. It was so nice to have him on, and definitely worth checking that out. If you're listening to my podcast, definitely keep an eye out on the lineup I have coming up as far as interviews. Got a lot of great doctors who have gone from mainstream to finding out the root cause and sharing it to the world. So keep an eye out on the podcast because I got a great lineup coming up. But before I get into that, let's talk about what not to eat when doing intermittent fasting. Now, this could be what not to eat in general. I would say granted, this probably doesn't hit everything, but I'm going to just touch on sometimes when you focus on what not to eat, it makes things simple and easy, and then you can focus on things that you should be eating, which we talk a lot about. But what should we avoid? Well, we should avoid, I'm going to talk about 4 items, and I'll go a little bit more into detail regarding them. Number 1 is avoiding refined carbs. Refined carbs are everywhere. If you think it's whole grain and it's commercial whole grain, it's not. It's refined. I know it's sort of a sad thing. There are alternatives if you really want to do bread, but if you can avoid bread, most of like 95% of the time, that would be a great way to go. I prefer not to eat bread at all, but there are sources of bread that are a little bit better. Something called Ezekiel Bread, which is in the frozen aisle, is an alternative if you really want to add some bread into your life. And another alternative is making your own. I know a lot of people love doing that. Ben Greenfield talks about making his own sourdough bread. So either make your own or find a really, really high quality one, like Ezekiel Bread that you could have from time to time. But I just think keep it easy. Avoid bread, avoid pastries, avoid anything that's refined in a sense, cakes, candy, obviously. These can promote inflammation and prediabetes and get you on this roller coaster of insulin and glucose that we want to avoid. And the problem, I think, a lot of times with refined carbs is if you think about a lot of the breakfast foods, these are things that people are eating right off the bat. And granted, when you eat something in the morning, let's just say at 10 o'clock, hopefully not right when you get up. I always talk about that. But let's say 2 hours later, you have pancakes and a muffin. But, the thing about it is your body can handle carbs probably better in the morning than it can later on in the day because you're more insulin sensitive. But essentially, you're starting your day off with something that's so refined that your insulin levels are just going to be on a roller coaster for the rest of the day, and it's going to cause fatigue and burnout. I don't know about you, but if I got up and I had pancakes, I'd be about an hour or 2 hours later, I'd be sleeping. So I want to try to avoid that. I guess if you really want to have a treat and maybe it's your birthday, have it a little bit later in the day when you don't have to focus on anything. But either way, avoiding it altogether makes it easy because you won't get on that sort of insulin, blood sugar roller coaster that we want to avoid. So avoiding refined carbs is number 1. Number 2 is sugar, right? Sugar's in a lot of things. I actually have a bunch of interviews coming up, like I talked about. Dr. Robert Lustig, we'll talk about that. He wrote this book called Metabolical that'll be out in a couple of weeks. I got Dr. William Davis coming on, Dr. Richard Johnson, who talks about fructose a lot in his book, which I'm reading right now, Nature Wants Us to Be Fat, and how fructose can really play a role in uric acid levels, which could eventually cause a lot of issues, but one of them obviously that's most known is gout. So you want to keep an eye out for those interviews, but avoiding sugar as much as possible because it's really added to almost everything you could imagine. Even healthy meal replacements or these low carb bars that you're seeing everywhere, keep an eye out for that added sugar and try to avoid that as much as possible. We talk about fruit. Fruit in moderation is fine. That has fructose. I know it does have, that's the main sugar that's in fruit. But if you could have the berries from time to time, that is fine. I think the issue then, and you're going to hear about it in my interviews, is when you're drinking sugar. So if you're someone who loves drinking Coke or loves fruit juices, just cut those out, and that can go a long way. Number 3, trans fats, veggie oils. I mean, I'm sure you're hearing this a lot as well. Vegetable oils has just been tied to almost every food. So if you go down the aisle, just for the hell of it, look at the labels, and you're going to see it in almost everything. And I talk about it a little bit on my last micro podcast where I talked about omega-3s versus omega-6. And omega-6s is pretty much vegetable oils for the most part. The problem is not even though the fact that omega-6s are, you want some in your diet, but the problem that I talk about is these vegetable oils, when you heat them, they're highly inflammatory and they become oxidized. Okay. And that can help raise, bad cholesterol. And when I say bad cholesterol, I don't mean just LDL, because LDL actually can be protective and not necessarily be bad. It's the small particle LDL that you got to watch out for. And so you just got to be careful with these vegetable oils. I wouldn't be cooking in canola oil or sunflower oil. Cook in coconut oil or avocado oil or ghee or butter, and avoid these vegetable oils. I mean, if you're going out to eat all the time, and I talk about this, they're cooking in vegetable oils. So if you eat out a lot, maybe ask them what they're cooking in and ask them to replace it with something else, butter or ghee. And if you are going out a lot, that means when you're at home and you're eating, make sure you don't cook in it for sure. So that's number 3. Number 4, artificial sweeteners. Question that gets asked a lot is, what about these artificial sweeteners? I think they've become on the market because these companies are realizing that, if I put sugar, everyone's going to avoid it. But some of these artificial sweeteners could actually be worse. I don't know. That's a toss up, right? I mean, we don't want to be having all these sugars in our diets, but then you got artificial sweeteners that are added. It just confuses everyone. So if you can avoid, I'm going to give you the top 5 to avoid. That way you can just stick to that list, and that'll keep it, simplify it for you. Number 1, aspartame. Aspartame is in most notably a lot of Diet Cokes, but also it could be an Equal or NutraSweet. It's in over 6,000 consumer foods and drinks. And I didn't even know this, over 500 prescription drugs and over-the-counter meds. Aspartame is in. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. If you're having headaches and migraines and dizziness and maybe mood disorders, and you're having a lot of aspartame in your diet, perhaps you should be cutting that out. Number 2 to avoid, sucralose. This is in Splenda, most notably. But there was actually a human and rodent study that demonstrated that sucralose may actually alter your glucose and insulin. And so a lot of times with these artificial sweeteners, the manufacturers will be like, oh, it's not going to affect your blood sugar. And some of them don't, which is positive, and it's not going to spike your insulin and blood sugar, but it can cause other issues. So it's not really it's sort of I guess it's a win-lose, right? Maybe you're not getting that spike in blood sugar that you would get from just normal table sugar, but you got to keep an eye out for some of the other things and some of the studies that are done on aspartame and sucralose. Another one is acetasulfame K, also shortened ACE, ACEK. This could be in a lot of things. It could be in, it's like Sweet and Safe it could be in beverages, it could be in candies. But look out for that. I always say, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. So I can't even pronounce some of these. Another one is saccharin. That was in Sweet and Low, like in the 70s. But it's been linked to bladder cancer, but they're putting it in everything. This is a sweetener that's been in like child's medications, chewable aspirin, cough syrups, over-the-counter meds. So these prescription meds are putting these sweeteners in, and the problem is this could cause other issues. So lastly on the list is xylitol. Xylitol, I think when it first came out, people thought it was like the end all, but these sugar alcohols, I won't even just say this xylitol, erythritol, maltitol, mannitol, sorbitol. I guess if it ends in a TOL, you should probably avoid it. Sugar alcohols are put in a lot of things. Like I was just looking at this like keto ice cream, just seeing what was in it. And if I'm going to have ice cream, which I really don't rarely, I just want milk and cream, just the basics, right? But it's sweetened with like so much of these sugar alcohols. I've noticed if I do have sugar alcohols, which I don't really anymore, bloating, gas, cramping, diarrhea. So all in all, let's avoid these sugar alcohols as much as possible. I know I went on a tangent with these artificial sweeteners, but I think they're being used more and more, and we should just find a way to avoid them. And you're probably saying, well, what should we look for that some foods could be sweetened with that might be okay? Raw honey, I would say, the raw honey, there are a lot of benefits with enzymes, antioxidants, iron, zinc, potassium, calcium, that raw honey has. But you got to get the quality. The darker the honey, the richer the flavor, the greater the nutrient benefits. Commercial honey is not good. So you could drizzle it onto things if you want from time to time and use that as a sweetener. Stevia is not so bad. Even dates, coconut sugar, monk fruit. So these are some alternatives that you can use. And you're seeing stevia in a lot, and it has some validity. I think that it's a lot better than those sugar alcohols that you're seeing, like erythritol and the ones that I mentioned as well. So dates are also used a lot as well. Now, a lot of these, like for example, dates can cause a little bit of a high glycemic index or glycemic load. So you don't want to overdo it with these, but these are better than using the list that I mentioned to you before with aspartame and sucralose and things like this. Coconut sugar, again, this could be used in recipes, I would say, if you're making things. So those are some options as far as sweeteners. And that's the list I wanted to give you today as far as foods that you should avoid. Refined carbs, sugar, trans fats / vegetable oils, which are in almost everything. So just make sure you read labels, and artificial sweeteners. So make it your job to avoid those. Not a job, but it's your health. And find some substitutes. If you got questions, you can email me, brian@briangrin.com, and hopefully that'll help you out. Remember, if you want to get into fasting, have someone guide you, start eating clean, and then you can start getting into some fasting. Avoid snacking is a good way to start. So anyways, hope you enjoy. Have a great rest of the week, and look out for the interview on Friday. You're going to love it. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.